Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning, ma'am.
Only one student.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes. This is the first hour still. Hope you are doing fine. Stay safe at home.
Yes, ma'am.
So today we are beginning with the next section of the gross anatomy, that is the abdomen. So from today onwards we'll be starting with the gross anatomy of the abdomen. So just before that we'll have a brief introduction to the abdomen, which part is called as the abdomen and what are its walls and all. So first we'll discuss about that, and from tomorrow onwards there will be the whatever the muscles, the viscera and all will be taken in detail. So today we are briefing about the introduction to the abdomen. So what do you mean by which part is called as the abdomen? The part of the abdomen, the trunk below the diaphragm. So this is called as the abdomen. Okay, this is the abdomen. So this is what you are seeing is the diaphragm. Okay, so this diaphragm separates the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. So this whole part is called as the trunk. So the part of the trunk below the diaphragm is called as the abdominal cavity. So this abdominal cavity is divided by a plane of a pelvic inlet. So this what you are seeing inside. So this is divided by the plane of the pelvic inlet into two parts, the abdominal cavity above and the pelvic cavity below. So within the abdomen there are two cavities. One is the abdominal cavity, which contains the abdominal viscera, and the pelvic cavity, which contains the pelvic viscera. So this both constitutes the abdomen proper. So this part of the abdomen is called as the abdominal cavity, and this is called as the pelvic cavity. So this abdomen, it contains whatever the vessels, nerves, lymphatics, all related to the abdomen. Apart from that, it contains two important tubes. One is the GIT, which and its company, that is your all the stomach, whatever the intestine. So that is all one part, and the other part is the urogenital system. So these are the two important contents of the abdomen. Now this whatever the abdomen sorry. So this abdomen and its viscera are covered by an extensive serous membrane, which is called as the peritoneum. So the walls of the abdomen and whatever the abdominal viscera are there, they are covered by an extensive serous membrane, which is called as the peritoneum. So this peritoneum lines the walls and the viscera. So it will both these layers will become, but that is a parietal layer and the visceral layer. So they both become continuous and enclose a cavity which is called as the, or a potential space which is called as the peritoneal cavity. So that is called as the, like you have heard about the pleural cavity, same thing is present in the abdomen, which is called as the peritoneal cavity. So this peritoneal cavity is open in females. So it is open in males, it is a closed sac, whereas in females, because of the presence of the pelvic ostia through the pelvic ostia of the uterine tube, the peritoneal cavity will remain open in the females. That is the one difference between the peritoneal cavity of the males and females. In males it is a closed sac, whereas in females it is an open sac. Through the pelvic ostia, okay, of the uterine tube, it will become open. Okay, so that is the important thing about the peritoneal cavity. So before going to the abdomen proper, so just you should know some important landmarks of the abdomen, like you have seen in the thorax, the sternal angle, the ribs, the vertebrae. So similarly in the abdomen also you have got certain important landmarks. One is the xiphisternum. So this is the xiphisternum. So you have already dealt with it, which is a part of the sternum. So this is the xiphisternum, which lies at the level of the T9 vertebra, at the T9 vertebra. So this is the xiphisternum. Now this is called as the costal margin. So costal margin will be formed by 7, 8, 9 and 10 ribs, which will run upwards and and they are attached to the xiphoid process. So this is the costal margin. So it is the seventh vertebra which will be attached to the sternum. Remaining all will be indirectly attached to the sternum through the costal cartilage. So this is the costal margin, which is formed by 7, 8, 9, 10 ribs. So that is one important landmark. The other most important landmark is the umbilicus, which is a midline cicatricial tissue, or it is a scar tissue which is present in the midline along the linea alba. So this corresponds to the level of L3 and L4 in adults. It varies in children, so and in the old age. So in adults it is L3 and L4. The other one is the iliac crest. So this is the iliac crest, which is the other important landmark of the abdomen. So these are all the important landmarks. So what are the various quadrants and all, we'll see later. So this first will deal with this all the landmarks. Okay. Then next, some soft tissue landmarks also you will be seeing. So one important is the linea alba. So this is a midline line which is called as the linea alba, extending from the xiphisternum to the pubic symphysis, which is enclosed in a median furrow. Okay, it is enclosed in a median furrow. So this linea alba divides the abdomen into right and the left half. So this is called as the linea alba. Lateral to it, there is one more curved line which is called as the linea semilunaris. This is called as the linea semilunaris. 5 centimeters lateral to the linea alba, there is one more curved line which is called as the linea semilunaris. What it represents? It represents the lateral border of a muscle which is called as the rectus abdominis. What do you mean by rectus abdominis? Rectus means straight. Okay, so this muscle on each side of the midline, there is a muscle which is called as the rectus abdominis. So this lateral border of the rectus abdominis forms a curved line with the convexity outwards. So that is called as the linea semilunaris. So this is called as the linea semilunaris. Apart from that, some transverse furrows will be seen. So this is what you call it as the abs. Okay. So these are all the tendinous intersections of this rectus abdominis muscle. So that is produced, whatever your abs you see, it is because of the tendinous intersections of this rectus abdominis muscle, which is present along the each side of the linea alba. So one is the linea alba, which is a linear furrow which is extending from the xiphisternum to the pubic symphysis. And this is the linea semilunaris, very important. So this is called as the linea semilunaris. So this is some soft tissue landmark. So this is how you are seeing. So this is the rectus abdominis muscle. Okay. Then this is the linea alba, extending from the xiphisternum to the symphysis pubis. So this is the midline depression, that is the umbilicus. So very clearly you can see here, this is the linea semilunaris, and this is all what you call as the abs because of the tendinous intersection of this muscle, that is the rectus abdominis. So lateral border of this, what you are seeing is the linea semilunaris. So this is the linea semilunaris. So these are the important landmarks what you see in the abdomen. So before going to the planes, so just we'll discuss the walls of the abdomen. What are the walls of the abdomen? Anteriorly, posteriorly, roof and the floor. Okay, so this is the whole is the abdomen. Okay, so anteriorly, so the roof is formed by the diaphragm. So this is what you are seeing. So the roof of the abdomen is formed by the diaphragm. So this part moves up and down with the respiration, and which will alter the intrathoracic and the intra-abdominal pressures. Okay, so this is the roof of the abdomen. This is the floor of the abdomen. So floor of the abdomen in the posterior part will be formed by something called as the urogenital diaphragm, and in the anterior part it will be formed by something called as the pelvic diaphragm, where your the anal opening and the genital openings are present. So here that region is called as the urogenital diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm. So these two will form the floor of the abdomen, and they will help in the process of defecation, micturition, whatever is there. So that is through this pelvic diaphragm and the urogenital diaphragm. So this is the floor of the abdomen. So this is the anterior wall of the abdomen. So anterior wall is firm and elastic. So firmness will provide protection to the abdominal viscera, and elasticity will allow the expansion of the abdomen during respiration and whatever the other acts are there. So this is the anterior wall, which is firm and elastic. Mainly it is formed by the three flat muscles of the abdomen and their aponeurosis, that is the external oblique, internal oblique and the transversus abdominis. So that we'll discuss later. So this is the anterior wall, which is musculofacial. Okay, it is musculofacial, whereas posterior wall is musculofacial, where you are seeing, so you are having the vertebrae. Apart from that, whatever the vessels and nerves are there, they are present along this posterior abdominal wall. So this is the posterior abdominal wall. So this is the abdomen with its boundaries, that is the roof, the floor, anterior wall and the posterior wall. So next, coming to the anterior wall. So today we are discussing only about the anterior wall. So this is the anterior wall of the abdomen. So what are the boundaries of the anterior wall of the abdomen? So above you have got the xiphisternum and the costal margin. So costal margin I have already discussed. So it is by the 7, 8, 9, 10 ribs. So this is the xiphisternum and the costal margin above. Below you have got the iliac crest, the pubic tubercle, pubic crest and the pubic symphysis. So in the midline you have got the pubic symphysis. So this is the lower boundary of the abdomen. Apart from, so this is, here we will be having the fold of the groin, which will separate the abdomen from the thigh and anterior part of the thigh. So this is, this here we will be having the anterior fold of the groin. Okay, so this is the lower boundary of the abdomen, and on each side we will be having the extension of the mid axillary line, which separates the anterior abdominal wall from the posterior abdominal wall. So these are all the boundaries of the anterior abdominal wall. So anterior abdominal wall, we have told it is firm and elastic. Okay, so these are the walls of the abdomen. So next you have got something called as the planes of the abdomen. So for the topography of the abdomen, so you want to look, so we are told abdomen has got numerous viscera. For topographical relations, or knowing the topographical relations of the abdomen has been divided into numerous quadrants by some planes. So some vertical planes and some horizontal planes. So first we'll discuss about the horizontal planes and then we'll go for the vertical planes. So very important, so this may be asked in the theory also, that is the transpyloric plane is especially very important. So it is asked as a 3-marker question for you all. So that is the transpyloric plane. Even quadrants of the abdomen is also sometimes asked, but it is very important when in the dissection also. So various, how the abdomen is divided into various quadrants you have to know. That is I have already told for the topographical relations of the various viscera. Apart from that, clinically also it is important. So any abdomen, if it is enlarged, you have to palpate it through the anterior abdominal wall. You want to take any incisions, you are usually taking it through the anterior abdominal wall, the skin of the anterior abdominal wall. Incisions are there. That's why knowing about the planes is very important. So what are the various planes? So first one is called as the transpyloric plane. Very important. Transpyloric plane. It is a transverse plane which passes anteriorly through the midpoint between the xiphisternum and the pubic symphysis. Okay, the suprasternal notch and the pubic symphysis. So midline of that you will be having the transpyloric plane. So this is the suprasternal notch and this is the pubic symphysis. So this will be the transpyloric plane anteriorly. Roughly it corresponds 5 centimeters below the xiphisternal joint. Okay, 5 centimeters below the xiphisternal joint, and anteriorly it passes through the 9th costal cartilage, tip of the 9th costal cartilage, and behind it will be passing through the L1 vertebra. Okay, behind through the L1 vertebra. So that is the transpyloric plane. So what is transpyloric plane? It is a transverse plane which is which is taken midpoint between the suprasternal notch and the pubic symphysis, or roughly corresponds 5 centimeters below the xiphisternum, or midpoint between the xiphisternum and the umbilicus will be the transpyloric plane. So anteriorly it is passing through the ninth vertebra, sorry, the ninth rib and tip of the ninth rib, and behind it will be passing to the L1 vertebra. Why this part is called as the transpyloric plane? Because here the pylorus of the stomach will be seen at this transpyloric plane. The hilum of both the kidney are present at this plane. Then it marks the origin of the superior mesenteric artery, and it marks the termination of the spinal cord. Okay, termination of the spinal cord. So these are the various events which are seen at the transpyloric plane. So one is the pylorus of the stomach is seen here, hilum of both the kidney, origin of the superior mesenteric artery, and the termination of the spinal cord. So it is passing behind through the L1 vertebra. So this plane is called as the transpyloric plane. Next, you have got something called as the transtubercular plane. Transtubercular plane. So this is also a horizontal plane which is passing through the tubercles of the iliac crest. So this is the iliac crest. So just 5 centimeters behind the anterior superior, so this is the anterior superior iliac spine. So just 5 centimeters behind the anterior superior iliac spine, you have got something called as the tubercle of the iliac crest. So joining the tubercles of both the iliac crest will form this transtubercular plane. So this is the transtubercular plane, and behind it will be passing through the L5 vertebra. So behind it is passing through the L5 vertebra. So this plane is called as the transtubercular plane. This transpyloric plane is called as also the Addison's plane. Okay, Addison's plane. So these are the two important horizontal planes, that is the transpyloric and the transtubercular. One more plane is there which is called as a subcostal plane. So which will be passing through the tips of the 10th costal cartilage in front, and behind it will be passing through the L3. So transpyloric is L1, subcostal is L3, and transtubercular is L5. So these are the various horizontal planes of the abdomen. Okay, transpyloric, subcostal, and the transtubercular. Then you have got the two vertical planes. These are the right and the left lateral planes. Okay, these are also called as the lateral planes. So above it will be starting from the mid clavicular line, that is the midpoint of the clavicle. It will be extending downwards between the pubic symphysis and the anterior superior iliac spine. So this midpoint you have to join. So this point is also called as the mid-inguinal point here. This point in the lower part is called as the mid-inguinal point. So from the mid-clavicular line above to the mid-inguinal point below. So mid-inguinal point is between the anterior superior iliac spine and the pubic symphysis. So this plane is called as the lateral plane. So this is the lateral plane. So these are the various planes what just now we have told, that is the transpyloric plane at L1, transtubercular plane at L5, and the subcostal plane at the L3 vertebra. So these are the various planes what you have to know. So this is the anterior superior iliac spine, the tubercle. So this is called as the fold of the groin. So this is the fold of the groin. Okay. So these are the various planes of the abdomen. So this is something called as the subcostal plane, just now what I had discussed, passing through the tip of the 10th costal cartilage, that will be the subcostal plane. This is L3. Okay. Now these planes will divide the abdomen into various quadrants. So what are those quadrants? So totally there will be 9 quadrants. So there are the 2 vertical and 2 horizontal. Horizontal will be transtubercular and transpyloric only. So this will divide the abdomen into 9 quadrants where your numerous viscera are located. So in the midline above, first you will be having the epigastric, then you are having the umbilical in the midline, and hypogastric below. So these are the midline quadrants, epigastric. So epigastric where you are mainly the stomach is present here. Umbilical mainly your coils of the intestine. So this is the hypogastric region. Again some coils of the intestine are present. So these are the 3 midline quadrants, that is the epigastric, umbilical, and the hypogastric. So next the lateral ones. So in the right and left side you will be having so hypochondriac region. This is called as the hypochondrium. So mainly in the right hypochondrium, can anyone tell which viscera will be present here? Liver, yes, correct. So here this is the hypochondrium, then this is the lumbar, and this is the iliac fossa. Okay, below the transtubercular plane, we will be having the iliac fossa. This is the lumbar region. Okay, this is the hypochondriac. Similarly, left hypochondriac, where mainly your spleen is present. Then this is the lumbar region, okay, where mainly your kidneys will be present, and this is the iliac fossa, where mainly your the large intestine on both the sides will be present. So this is the left iliac fossa. So altogether there are 9 quadrants of the abdomen. So that is the epigastric region, then the right and the left hypochondriac, umbilical, then the right and the left lumbar, then the hypogastric, right and the left iliac fossae. So these quadrants are very important to topographically locate your viscera. So that is why you have to know the quadrants of the abdomen. So already I have discussed the walls of the abdomen or the boundaries, the roof, the floor. So this is how your anterior abdominal wall is, that is formed by the 3 flat muscles of the abdomen. Okay, so this is the first. Today we are discussing only about the anterior abdominal wall. I hope the quadrants is clear for you all. Is it clear?
Yes,
So these are the various quadrants of the abdomen. So next we'll be dealing with the layers of the abdomen. What are the various? So today we are just discussing about the anterior abdominal wall. We are not discussing anything about the posterior abdominal wall. So what are the various layers of the abdomen? So when we have told the anterior abdominal wall is firm and elastic, so it has got numerous layers. So what are those numerous layers? So first layer will be the skin. Okay, then you have got the superficial fascia, then the 3 flat muscles, that is the external oblique muscle along with its aponeurosis, internal oblique muscle along with its aponeurosis, the transversus abdominis muscle, the fascia transversalis, the extraperitoneal fat, and the peritoneum. So these are the layers of the abdomen. 8 layers of the abdomen: skin, superficial fascia, external oblique, internal oblique, then the transverse abdominis, the transversalis fascia or the fascia transversalis, extraperitoneal fat, and the peritoneum. Embryologically, this layer is very important because whatever your viscera are there, they are present within this extraperitoneal connective tissue or the extraperitoneal fat. And opposite the umbilicus, most of the layers it will be reduced only to 6 layers because of the formation of the rectus sheath, the fusion of these some muscles. So opposite the midline or in the midline, it will be forming only the 6 layers. So these are the layers of the abdomen. So first we will discuss each of these layers. So what is the skin of the anterior abdominal wall? It is thin and more sensitive compared to the posterior abdominal wall. So the skin of the anterior abdominal wall shows numerous lines what we have discussed already. One is the linea alba. So this we are told, which is a midline groove extending from the xiphisternum to the pubic symphysis and dividing the abdomen into 2 halves. So that is the linea alba, first what we have discussed. So next is the linea semilunaris. What it indicates? Lateral border of which muscle? Linea semilunaris. Lateral border of which muscle? Which is this muscle here?
Rectus abdominis.
Yes, so it is the lateral border of the rectus abdominis, which forms the linea semilunaris. Then next you have got the Langer lines. So what are these Langer lines? Whatever the collagen fibers are present in the skin, they produce some lines which are called as the Langer lines. So in the limbs, these Langer lines are longitudinal or vertical, whereas in the abdomen they are horizontal. Why this has to be known? Any skin incision of the abdomen has to be taken mostly in the direction of the Langer lines to prevent the formation of the scar. Okay, wherever you have taken the incision, if you want to prevent the formation of the scar, so you have to take a incision along the Langer lines which are directed horizontally in the abdomen. So that is the one more important thing what you should know in the Langer lines. Next, the other thing what is present important is the umbilicus. So this umbilicus is a midline cicatricial tissue or a scar tissue which represents the fetal end of the umbilical cord, and this umbilicus is present at the level of L3 and L4 in adults, but in the children it is at a lower level because in them the pelvic region is not well developed, and with the old age also it will sink to the lower level because of the loss of the tone of the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. So in the adults it is at L3 L4 level. Though it is a cicatricial tissue or a scar tissue, it is very important, you can tell the landmark. Okay, so that is the umbilicus. Then next, what you are seeing, the other thing is the presence of the striae gravidarum in the females. So striae gravidarum, what are these? These striae gravidarum are usually they are white lines which are produced due to the stretching of the dense collagenous tissue because of the presence of the gravid uterus. So it is seen in the pregnant females, that is called as the striae gravidarum. So these are the other important features to be noted in the anterior abdominal wall. Then next you have got something called as, so you have to know something about the umbilicus. So what we have told, umbilicus it represents the fetal end of the umbilical cord, and so it is lying at the level of the L3 and L4. So what it represents, the important thing is the watershed line. What is this watershed line? Whatever the lymphatic drainage and the venous drainage of the abdomen is there, so above the umbilicus will go upwards and below the umbilicus will go to downwards. So that is why the umbilicus is called as the watershed line. Okay, watershed line, because lymphatic drainage and venous drainage will go upwards above the umbilicus, and below the umbilicus it will go downwards. So whatever the lymphatic drainage is there above the umbilicus will ultimately drain into the axillary group of lymph nodes, whereas below the umbilicus it will ultimately drain into the superficial inguinal group of lymph nodes. Venous drainage above the umbilicus will, whatever it is there, it will go through the it will ultimately drain into the superior vena cava, and below the umbilicus it will ultimately drain into the inferior vena cava. But this umbilicus also forms an important landmark for the portocaval anastomosis. So though there are many sites of the portocaval anastomosis, that is the anastomosis between the systemic veins and the portal tributaries of the portal vein forms the portocaval anastomosis. The umbilicus forms an important region where the portocaval anastomosis takes place between the tributaries of the portal vein. So what happens whenever there is any obstruction of this in the portocaval obstruction, because of the back pressure the veins will be distended here. Okay, because of the back pressure, anything in the liver, anything has happened, any tumor or anything, so there will be backflow of the blood, which will ultimately lead to the dilatation and tortuosity of these vessels around the umbilicus, which is called as the caput medusae. This is called as the caput medusae. So why this name? This will be like spokes of a wheel. Why this name has been given? Because it represents the crown of the Greek mythology god serpent. So that's why the name has been given as the caput medusae. So this is called as the caput medusae. In Greek mythology there is a god which is called serpent, having the crown of that is called as the medusae. Caput medusae. Caput means head. So that's why the name has been given as the caput medusae. So this is due to the obstruction of this the portal vessels, so around the umbilicus. So other important the other thing is the umbilicus is supplied by the T10 segment of the spinal cord. Okay, so the umbilicus, whatever the anterior abdominal wall is there, it has got numerous dermatomes. So what is this dermatome? Dermatome means any part of the skin which will be supplied by a particular segment of the spinal cord is called as the dermatome. What is dermatome? A part of the skin which will be supplied by a particular spinal nerve. So that will be called as the dermatome. So in the anterior abdominal wall, at the xiphisternum, you will be having the T7, then T8, T9. Around the umbilicus, very important is the T10 segment of the spinal cord, then T11 and the T12. Okay. T11 and the T12, that is your subcostal nerve, and the L1, most lower part will be supplied by the L1. So this all will be, this is called as the dermatomal innervation of the anterior abdominal wall. So why this you have to know? Because there will be communication between the spinal nerves and the autonomic nerves. So any pain in a particular region will be referred to that segment which will be supplied by that particular dermatome. So like example, if you are there is any pain in the appendix, so that will be referred to the umbilical region. So any pain in the kidneys, so it will be referred to the lumbar region. So any pain in the any peptic ulcers or anything are there, there will be pain in the epigastric region. So that is called as the referred pain. Okay, so why this is? Because of the dermatomal innervation of the anterior abdominal wall. So here you are having T7, T8, T9, umbilicus is very important, T10, T11, subcostal nerve, and the L1. So this is the nerve supply of the anterior abdominal wall. Okay, so that is about the umbilicus. So the other embryological significance of this umbilicus is the presence of the medulla-intestinal duct, and the midgut will partially herniate into the umbilicus. Again it will return back. So that will be discussed when they are taking about the gut. So just why you just know these words, don't go into the details now because it will be taken in the embryology again proper. So what is this raspberry red tumor, then the urinary fistula, exomphalus. So all this will be taken later again. So that is about the umbilicus. So this is also again asked as a question for you all. So you have to read about it separately for 5 marks. So that is about the skin. So next coming to the superficial fascia. So this is the superficial fascia of the anterior abdominal wall. So above the line joining the two anterior superior iliac spines, so this will be a single layer. Okay, it will be a single layer, but below that line it is forming two layers. One is called as the superficial fatty layer of the camper, okay, and the deep layer which is called as the membranous layer or the fascia of the scarpa. Okay, so there are two layers. One is the superficial fatty layer and the deep membranous layer. Between the two layers you will be having the superficial epigastric vessels, the superficial external pudendal vessels, and the superficial external iliac vessels, which are the branches of the femoral artery. So between these two layers you will be having those sorry, only the superficial epigastric vessels will be present here. So that is the superficial fatty layer and a deep membranous layer. So this deep membranous layer, it will be attached in the midline to the linea alba, and below this line it will be continuous with the deep fascia of the thigh, which is called as the fascia lata. Here it will be forming the fascia lata. So whatever the superficial layer is there, it is continuous with the fat of the adjoining areas. But this deep membranous layer, it will become continuous with the fascia of the deep fascia of the thigh, which is called as the fascia lata. Then it will become continuous with the over the scrotum. It will be replaced by a muscle which is called as the dartus muscle. So there that layer is absent, and it will form a fundiform ligament of the penis. So these are some modification of the deep membranous layer or the fascia of the scarpa. So this is the superficial fatty layer and the deep membranous layer. Okay. So that is about the superficial fascia. So next to the superficial fascia, you are having the external oblique muscle. So all these muscles will be taken in detail tomorrow, the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. So just I will tell you. So this is the external oblique muscle. Okay, this is the external oblique muscle and its aponeurosis. So this is the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. So this muscle will be taking origin from the lower 3 ribs, and here it will form a aponeurosis. It will be inserted into the linea alba by forming a aponeurosis and also forming the anterior wall of the rectus sheath. And here it will be inserted into the iliac crest, and here it will form the modification, something called as the inguinal ligament. Whatever the lower border of the external oblique muscle is there, it forms the inguinal ligament and the lacunar ligament. Apart from that, there is an oval opening above the pubic crest in the external oblique muscle, which is called as the superficial inguinal ring. Okay, so this is the external oblique muscle of the abdomen. This is the external oblique muscle. This is its aponeurosis. This is the inguinal ligament which is extending from the anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle. So this is the inguinal ligament. So this is how you are seeing. So this is all the external oblique muscle which is taking origin from the ribs, and this is the iliac crest what you are seeing. So this is whole of the iliac crest. So this is the anterior superior iliac spine. Okay, then just behind that you will be having the tubercle. So 5 centimeters behind that you will be having the tubercle. So this is the iliac crest totally what you are seeing. So this will be the inguinal ligament. This is the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. So that is one thing. Then this is the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. So it is, I have told, it is forming some modifications. So one is the inguinal ligament. So what I have told already. So from the anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle. So you are having this inguinal ligament. Next you are having something called as the lacunar ligament. So this is the lacunar ligament which forms the boundary of the femoral sheath. So this is the lacunar ligament. So these are the modifications of the external oblique muscle, and apart from that there is an opening in the external oblique muscle which is called as the superficial inguinal ring. Above the pubic crest there is a opening. Okay, so that is the something about the external oblique muscle. Okay, so these are all the expansions. So this is the inguinal ligament what you are seeing. Okay, then you have got the lacunar ligament here. So this is the lacunar ligament. Apart from that, it is forming something called as the pectineal ligament. Okay, pectineal ligament. So these are all the modifications of the external oblique muscle of the abdomen. So next you have got the internal oblique muscle. So once you open the external oblique, you will get the internal oblique muscle of the abdomen. So this internal oblique muscle is reverse. It is taking origin from the iliac crest and it will be inserted into lower 3 to 4 ribs. External oblique was, it is taking origin from the ribs and inserted into the iliac crest, but this is different. It is taking origin from the inner lip of the iliac crest and then it will be inserted into the ribs 3 to 4 ribs. So this is the internal oblique muscle of the abdomen. So again it is forming an aponeurosis. So opposite the linea albura, it will become continuous with the aponeurosis of the other internal oblique muscle, and it is forming the wall of the rectus sheath. So this is the external and this is the internal oblique muscle. So the next you have got something called as the cremaster and the pyramidalis, which are the contents of the rectus sheath. Then next, the third flat muscle of the abdomen is called as the transversus abdominis. Why it is called as the transversus abdominis? Because most of it is the fibers are horizontal in direction. That's why it is called as the transversus abdominis, which is taking origin from the iliac crest. Okay, again it will be inserted into the linea alba and it will become continuous with the other muscle, that is the opposite transversus abdominis muscle. So that is the transversus abdominis muscle. So these are the three important flat muscles of the abdomen. So most of these muscles they will form a conjoint tendon. These all three muscles, they will form a conjoint tendon and then they will be inserted. So all this will be taken in detail tomorrow. So rectus sheath, again it will be taken to in the next class. So this is how the layers of the abdomen are there: the skin, the superficial fascia, then the having the fatty layer and the membranous layer. Then you have got the external oblique muscle, the internal oblique muscle, the transversus abdominis, and there is something called as the fascia transversalis. So this is something called as the fascia transversalis. What is this fascia transversalis? So fascia transversalis is a fibroareolar membrane which is covering the posterior surface of the transversus abdominis muscle. So this is the transversus abdominis muscle. So posterior to it there is a fibroareolar membrane which will be called as the fascia transversalis. So below it will be here attached to the posterior margin of the inguinal ligament, the iliac crest and the pubic crest below, and below it will be continuous with the subdiaphragmatic fascia, and in the midline it will be inserted into the linea alba. So that is called as the fascia transversalis. So this fascia transversalis also has an opening which is called as the deep inguinal ring, okay, which is situated below the pubic tubercle. So there is one opening, triangular opening, which is called as the fascia, the deep inguinal ring. So between the deep and the superficial inguinal ring, you have got the inguinal canal. So the defect in this fascia transversalis is called as the deep inguinal ring, and in the external oblique muscle it is called as the superficial inguinal ring. So these are all the layers of the abdomen: the skin, superficial fascia, the external oblique, internal oblique, the transverse abdominis, and the fascia transversalis. Next you have got the extraperitoneal tissue. So this is how it is, you can see here. So this is the fascia transversalis. Okay. Then next you have got the peritoneum and the extraperitoneal connective tissue. So extraperitoneal tissue, what your fascia. So this mainly contains, in this layer you have got various viscera. Apart from that, you have got a fold which is called as the median umbilical fold. Okay, which is extending from the apex of the urinary bladder to the umbilicus. Okay, and some vessels are there in the extraperitoneal tissue. So that is the extraperitoneal tissue. Then you have got the peritoneum. The other thing what you should know is the something. So this is just I want to show, that is the deep inguinal ring and the superficial inguinal ring, where you have got the, so this is the inguinal canal. Okay, so this is the external oblique muscle, the internal, the transverse abdominis, and the fascia transversalis. So here you are having the deep inguinal ring, and this is the superficial inguinal ring. This will be called as the inguinal canal. So this peritoneum here, what you are seeing, it will be forming some folds which will be enclosing some vessels. There are three folds. One is called as the lateral fold, the median fold, and the median umbilical fold. So there are three folds. One is the lateral umbilical fold, the medial umbilical fold, and the median umbilical fold. So these are the three folds. That is the median, and median, lateral to it will be the medial. Then you will be having the lateral. So median umbilical fold will be enclosing something called as the, so this is the median umbilical, enclosing the median umbilical ligament, which is extending from the apex of the urinary bladder to the umbilicus. So that is called as the median umbilical fold. Okay, median umbilical fold enclosing the median umbilical ligament. This median umbilical ligament extends from the umbilicus. From the umbilicus to here you will be having the bladder. So from there to there you will be having the median umbilical fold. Then lateral to it you will be having the medial umbilical folds, which will be enclosing the obliterated umbilical artery. The umbilical artery which gets obliterated will be enclosed by a fold of the peritoneum, which is called as the medial umbilical fold, and more lateral to it you will be having the lateral umbilical fold, which will be enclosing the lateral umbilical fold. So this will be three folds what you will be seeing: the median, the medial, and the lateral umbilical fold. So these are the three folds which will be seen along the peritoneum. We will discuss later what is the rectus sheath, which are the muscles of the abdominal wall, anterior abdominal wall. So what are the functions of the anterior abdominal wall? So it is mainly the retention, that is whatever the contents are there, then the protection, the compression, and these will also be acting on the vertebral columns of various movements whatever are there because of the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. So these are the main functions of the anterior abdominal wall. Then there is something called as some space is there, which is called as the superficial inguinal space. So where is the superficial inguinal space situated? So that superficial inguinal space is situated, just a second, I will just show. So this superficial inguinal space will be situated between the aponneurus of the external oblique muscle and the membranous layer, that is the superficial fascia membranous layer. Between these two there is a space, potential space, which is called as the superficial inguinal space. So why this is important? It is mainly in the males. Whenever there is extravasation of the urine, it will get any obstruction of the urethra, so that urine may get collected in this superficial inguinal space. Okay, Okay, so these are the important things what you should know about the anterior abdominal wall. Then whatever the vessels and nerves are there. So vessels are mainly by the intercostal nerves. Just now what we have told, or the lower intercostal nerves will be supplying the anterior abdominal wall. The vessels are mainly the superficial and the inferior epigastric arteries, which are mainly seen in this rectus abdomen, the branches of that. And apart from that, you will be having the superficial, the external iliac, then the external pudendal and the superficial circumflex iliac branches. So these are also will be supplying the anterior abdominal wall. So nerves are mainly the intercostal nerves and arteries are mainly the branches of the superficial epigastric, inferior epigastric, and then you are having the branches of the femoral artery also, which will be supplying this. So these are the various layers of the abdomen. So and some things about the what are the boundaries and what are the contents of the, very important is the whatever the quadrants what I have just discussed. So all these quadrants are very important. Transpyloric plane is especially important. It is asked as a question for you all. Okay. Then what are the various layers? The skin, the superficial fascia. Then you have got the external oblique muscle, the internal oblique muscle, the transverse abdominis muscle, the fascia transversalis, extraperitoneal fat and the peritoneum. So these are all the layers of the abdomen. All these muscles will be taken in detail with the external, the internal, the rectus abdominis, the rectus sheath. So all this will be taken in detail, the inguinal canal. So all this will be taken from tomorrow onwards. Okay, so this is about the brief introduction to the abdomen, particularly the anterior abdominal wall. So posterior abdominal wall will be a separate topic where in detail it will be taken various muscles of the back, the important vessels of the abdomen, that is which are situated in the posterior abdominal wall. Okay. So this was about the introduction to the abdomen. So just go through it. If you have any queries, you can ask later. Okay. Thank you for patient listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
So just go through it once, read. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
So whatever topics are taken, just read then and there itself, so that if you have any queries, you can ask in the next class whenever we are taking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.